combating jet lag, it's a pretty complicated thing because there's lots of different variables. So I brought you on, Dr. Scott Sherr, because you've helped me with some jet lag protocols. I've got some other protocols myself.
Yeah.
And we're not talking just basic meal timing stuff. We're talking, what you can have on board. You've got pressurization changes. You've got high EMF. You've got high altitude, pressurized cabins. You've got all kinds of things that are factoring into why you feel cruddy with jet lag. It's not just time change. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
And you wanted to work together to kind of create a jet lag protocol that people could follow. And it doesn't have to be like transatlantic, traveling across the world. I mean, just a 3-hour or 2-hour shift. We all know how we feel after daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Just 1 hour, right?
Just 1 hour, yeah.
So 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, So Dr. Scott Sherr, what's sort of the first pinnacle for you when it comes to jet lag protocols?
I mean, there's so many things to start off with, but I think one of the fun ones and probably the most powerful that I've found recently is Methylene Blue. And this is a novel compound. It's been around for over 100 years. It is a fantastic mitochondrial optimizer. And what happens with airplane travel is that our mitochondria, they're not getting the loving they need at all because we are at about 8,000 feet pressurization. So if you're on a Dreamliner, one of the new airplanes, you get 6,000 feet pressurization, and that's going to be better for you. Why is that? 8,000 feet pressurization is about 14 to 16% oxygen. So on average at sea level, you're breathing about 21% oxygen. So any percentage you go down is going to cause significant stress on your mitochondria because your mitochondria need oxygen to make energy. And so if you live at sea level, you go on an airplane at 8,000 feet, it's like your mitochondria start going in shock. It's like, where's my oxygen? And then I'm getting this radiation exposure from being closer to the sun and less atmosphere. And then there's people that are breathing around me. And then the air, I'm getting jet fuel in my lungs, and it's all happening at the same time. And so what Methylene Blue can do as working on the mitochondria is it can actually help work just like oxygen. So it helps protect you from going into hypoxic stress or low oxygen stress. It helps decrease inflammation. It protects from radiation. And it's also an antimicrobial at the same time. So it's kind of like, it's a jack of all trades. Yeah. So it's not the first thing that I think about for many people, but it's one of the more novel ways that I utilize a jet lag protocol. I know you have many things that you think about too, but that's one of my main sort of things that I've been doing recently overall with Methylene Blue.
Yeah, and I think people are picking up on it now because they're seeing like RFK using it on a plane.
Yeah,
people
on
are
a plane,
like, why is he using it on a plane, right? I think there's something there.
I put a link down below for 30% off all things from Thrive Market on your first order. Now, they're not just about snacks and pantry staples. They've got good, legit, high protein foods, which is how I live. Even my snacks are high protein. Thing is, if you go to a grocery store, the high protein snacks, they're kind of playing games with you. Like they'll call it high protein, but you look at the ingredients and you realize that there's like some weird kind of like pea protein or something. Not that there's anything wrong with pea protein, but the reality is it's not what it seems on the surface. And it might only be 4 grams of protein. The thing I like about Thrive is you see what you get and you get what you see. It's transparent. So you can look at the ingredients and they're not gonna have garbage there and you're gonna be able to see it. And then it gets delivered right to your doorstep. So you're not having to spend time. Even myself, I know what to look for at a grocery store, but it takes me probably 25% longer to go grocery shopping than the average person because I do cross-reference everything that's in the ingredients. I don't like to bring that stuff into my house. Thrive Market takes that guesswork out of the equation for me, and it makes it accessible to me, but it makes it accessible to people all over the country. So that's what's really cool. So that link gets you 30% off your entire first grocery order and gets you a free $60 gift. Not to mention it gets delivered right to your doorstep, which is pretty darn cool, and their shipping is speedy fast. So that link down below.
You know a better thing for jet lag? Come live in Colorado with me, man.
That's true if you're at altitude.
So if you're already at altitude, it's like I live at 5,500 feet. When I go on an airplane, that delta, that change is not so bad. Yeah. And so the jet lag, I've just found transformative over the last several years since I lived in Colorado is like I'm already at altitude. So coming to sea level, number one, there's less hypoxia. Number two, I have more red blood cells than the average, 21%er, people that live at 21% oxygen. And as a result of that, I have more oxygen carrying capacity here at sea level than anybody else, that doesn't live at altitude.
What are, maybe we'll kind of go back and forth on this. I mean, one of the things that,
please.
I think most people know this by now because people like, Jack Kruse and everyone talk about it. But I mean, I do bring, and you don't need to have a super fancy schmancy one. People, as far as like having a good red light that's, you're going to use at home, then I think quality matters a lot more because you're looking for how deep can it penetrate. The newer models can you can be 18 inches, you can get a lot more penetration. For me, when I'm traveling, it's more just about the red light on the eyes. So, this grants people a little bit of sort of slack with this, where they can liberate themselves from like, okay, maybe you don't need to go get a $500 red light device, even in a relatively inexpensive one that's just the right nanometers, because I'm just focusing on the eyes. So for me, like when I get up in a new location.
Okay. I was going to ask if you're using it on a plane.
I have done it on a plane, but for me, it's mainly just to reset.
So, gotcha.
Or bring just even though one of those red light bulbs, right?
Yeah.
And just swap out a hotel room.
For sure.
Because you don't need to stare at it for long. You just get up in the morning and just make it a point the first couple nights or for a couple mornings you are somewhere, just look into that light. I know they have to cover their own. And they say like, don't look at it, but the 660 nanometer should not damage your eyes.
Agree.
So you could look directly at it.
Yep.
Again, you didn't hear it from me, right? But you can look at it directly, and you're just getting the light. I
believe you, and I agree with you.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's been a huge thing for me because it's like boom, and you
so
combine that with the methylene blue.
Yeah, you combine it with the methylene blue. Yeah. I was going to say like you can combine the methylene blue with the red light, and it's going to be a synergistic together. So you have methylene blue and red light both donate electrons on the electron transport chain, which is your mitochondria, how you make energy, and they donate the same location. So you'll feel the boost. And so if you don't have a red light panel, a great thing obviously is the sun, right? So if you have the capacity, and then when you're in an airplane, you're very ungrounded. You're on this airplane that's 35,000 feet above sea level. And so you can feel very ungrounded, very kind of light and kind of airy and feel like it's difficult for you to focus and kind of scattered. That's very common on airplanes because you're not grounded. And so grounding with light exposure can be a really nice combination once you get to your location as much as you can. People sometimes will travel with like grounding blankets and other kinds of grounding fancy things, but in general, if you can get your feet on the grass or on the ground, some sunlight exposure, some methylene blue can be great too. But I mean, there's so many other things. What are your thoughts on exercise around travel specifically?
So for me, coming back to the grounding thing, I almost always try to get my exercise in barefoot anyway, right?
Okay.
So now if I'm going to a gym, if I'm going out for a run, it's going to be different. But if I'm doing something, fortunately, a lot of the places that I travel, I either know people or I'm going to be training like at a gym that I know. Right. And I do try to train with my shoes off, and it makes a really big difference on multiple different fronts, biomechanically and from a grounding perspective. And I think before we move into kind of even the exercise nutrition piece too, there's legit science on the grounding piece. This isn't just like an Eastern philosophy thing. This is also just a flat out like getting grounded from an electrical perspective, like actually makes sense. And a lot of people talk, because I know some people tune out when they hear that, they hear grounding, but that's a very real thing. Like if you're flying in the air, there's not that conductivity that you actually need to really have A, force production, but B, also, energetic flow. And
it's important to emphasize that there is lots of good studies there. We're not just making it up and being all woo-woo anti-age or what is the new age about it, right? So
no, for sure. Now, as far as the exercise is concerned, I am very big. It's hard when you're traveling because a lot of times you're left to your own devices and with minimal equipment. So the default is to say like, go for a run or do something at a hotel gym where you're just going to have, a bike or something like that. As hard as it is when you're traveling, I make it a point to do something strenuous and short. Because for me, a lot of times
when you arrive, we're talking about,
or just at least the first morning, right? The first morning, trying to reset.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of doing zone 2 type work. But for someone like me, if I'm going to go out for a run, a lot of times it ends up being this like zone creep or scope creep, and it ends up becoming a difficult thing. And the last thing I really want to do, quite frankly, is tax my respiratory system after I've just been exposed to probably a bunch of stuff on the plane.
Or your sympathetic nervous system too, right? Then we can talk about that.
Exactly. You're in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
So for me, it actually works better to do something that's short, like 15, 20 minute, just high exertion, high intensity anaerobic, but less respiratory and more just doing like strength, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's probably a parasympathetic sort of thing, because even if you go out for just a gentle run or something like that, and you're prolonging that for 60 minutes, that's just a long, prolonged stress, right? When your body's already under stress. So I keep it short.
Yeah. Well, we know that that exercise is great for balancing our autonomic nervous system, right? In the sense that like short bursts of exercise, release things like BDNF and other kinds of things that are good for neuroplasticity, but they also regulate better your parasympathetic and sympathetic balance. And that's why exercise is so great. But if you over-exercise, if you're going too much, then you're going to be too sympathetic for too long, and then it's going to be hard for you to break down or to pare down to being more parasympathetic. But like that's interesting because like when you travel, you're often very sympathetically dominant because you're traveling, you're going to a new location, you have to go through airport security, you have to take off your clothes. I don't think anybody has to take off their clothes. If you do, you should probably go check on that particular person and get them fired. But it's a lot, and especially if you're traveling with children or if it's a holiday time, and it could be crazy. So a big thing for me always is working on that sympathetic parasympathetic balance. And so working on the GABA system can be really helpful. So I work on with GABA products, kind of things that enhance the GABA system, basically just, not breaking down, but just ramping down your sympathetic dominance. And that can be truly transformative because if you're sympathetically dominant, you're in fight or flight, you're on an airplane, you're just adding to the stress of being in a hypoxic location, changing your time zone and everything you mentioned. So I'm a big fan of GABAergic things, supplementation, but also things you can do, like work on your breathing patterns when you're on an airplane, like work on, some breathing patterns that increase your parasympathetic tone. So a big one, of course, is just, and very easy for people, is just to extend your exhales. So you breathe in and then slowly exhale, usually through your nose if you can. But, for like 3 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Pretty simple. But sometimes that could be hard if you're traveling with kids and they're all over you. And so some compounds can be helpful there. But that's a big one for me. But when you're talking about the exercise, when you get to the location, like a big thing you're probably thinking about too is hydration, right? And making sure you're well hydrated. What do you do for that typically?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. I mean, first off, and it kind of ties in with the food too.
Yeah.
I will not eat on the plane. I do not eat on the plane. I don't eat the plane food, and I do everything I can to not eat on the plane in general.
Does it matter how long the plane ride is? Or?
That's my last transatlantic flight. I fasted the whole time.
Okay,
and
you're used to that.
It's something that Laird Hamilton and I have talked about before. It's such a game changer. Now, you could get into all the stuff about circadian cues of not eating and eating, but at the end of the day, I just think a good reset before you get to your location and then eating your first meal when you're there and trying to align it with whatever meal it is where you're landing. So if I'm flying from LA to Munich, I will eat before I get on the plane, even if it's an odd time for me to normally eat. Okay. So if it's I will eat at 2 p.m. or something, whatever, I'm going to have a decent meal before I get on the plane, and then I'm going to fast. And then if I land in Munich and, I have to hang tight until dinner to eat, I will, right? So
you'll find the time when you get to the place that's at a normal time there.
Yes. Yeah. So like LAX to Munich, usually like the main flight is like 3:30, leaves 3:30 p.m. LAX, lands in Munich, I believe at 12 p.m.
Okay.
Right. So then 12 p.m. Munich time the next day. So then I hang tight till dinner and I eat sort of just that last meal at dinner. And then I just reset. And then the next morning, I'm going to have breakfast and I'm just going to get right on cue there. And I find that jet lag, when you're going that far, it really only takes a couple days to really align there. And then the exercise, try to just get it in fasted state before I eat and just kind of get all that stuff as much as I can. And as far as hydration before, I find that as crazy as it sounds, because again, people are saying, okay, well, you're going to be sedentary for a long period of time. As a metabolically healthy person, I will usually have a little bit of carbohydrates and creatine prior to flying, which sounds contradictory to what I would normally do. The reason that I do that is simply from the hydration aspect.
So makes sense.
Carbohydrates, although I don't typically consume a lot of them, prior to a flight, I might have 75 to 100, and that's just going to help me a little bit with the overall hydration, and I'll usually take in 10 grams of creatine. So I'm just getting this hyperhydration effect, and I do try to pre-hydrate before I get on the plane, because something about when you are, especially if I'm fasting on a plane and I'm not eating and my insulin levels come back down, any fluid that I do take in at those low insulin levels, I'm going to pee a lot more. So I end up losing a lot of electrolytes the more water that I drink in a low insulin state. Right. So I'm actually doing the opposite of what people would think. Oh, drink a lot of water on the plane. I'm like, actually, no, I hyperhydrate before and I hyperhydrate after.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Also, when you're on a plane, typically you're in a drier environment too, right? So if you're on sea level, you have some sort of amount of humidity. When you're on an airplane, you're going to have much less humidity. So people tend to get more dehydrated in general on planes because they're not used to that drier air, the drier situation. But it's interesting, you're kind of pre-hydrating and post-hydrating. And then during the time, how much are you drinking
Yeah, I'll sip.
You'll sip.
So
okay.
because I have a habit of not drinking water for a while and then
then chugging.
Chugging it.
That's not a good way to do it.
That's not a good way to do it.
Yeah, I've actually just went through this just recently, looking at like hydration mechanisms and how to best hydrate. And the best way to hydrate is to sip throughout the day. Unless you're doing lots of extra work or you're sweating a lot, then that's when you want to do more gulping. With the carbs, are you using like straight, like complex carbs? Are you thinking about like honey in this case, or?
I mean, I've used them all, but usually it's going to be things like potatoes, things like that. So it's something
So
a
it's
little bit
slower release.
starchier,
Yeah.
a little bit, but not crazy high glycemic.
Yeah.
Honey, I use something. I don't try to get honey as a carb source. I use honey more for antioxidants, right?
Yeah.
So for honey, it's usually a tablespoon or two.
Right.
It's not like a copious amount.
Right.
The one thing that I've been wanting to experiment with pre-flight is glycerol for like a hyperhydration effect, because I've thought that I've used that before long endurance events to hyperhydrate.
Sure.
The only problem is it doesn't agree with everyone's stomach. So that's the last thing you want to. So it's been something where I've had instances where I use a couple tablespoons of glycerol before a workout and I'm running to the bathroom, but it's not always consistently doing that. That's just not a position you want to be in on a plane.
No, that's not what you want to do.
So I want to test it on maybe a
you
short
don't have
flight.
disaster pants on a plane. Yeah. The thing about honey, which is interesting too, is I actually will give it to people at night, even when they're not on a plane, because some people just need more of a parasympathetic balance, and that can really help. There's some people that wake up in the middle of the night because their blood sugar drops, and then they get this cortisol rise, and then you can use the honey at night to do that. But because sleeping, and we can talk about sleep on planes, and when you get to your location is really, really important. So do you have any thoughts about it?
Well, it's interesting because now that I think about it, I didn't really put that together, that maybe the carbohydrates pre-flight for me are actually just having a cortisol modulating
part of
effect
it,
as well.
for
so
sure.
maybe I'm just calmer and cooler, and everything is because I've just found you find these little things that work for you. You don't always have a justification as to why, but you find, and the carbs pre-flight just does it for me. Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah. And then, so for me, when I think about traveling different time zones, I'm always thinking about resetting circadian rhythm, right? A good way to do this, as you said, with the eating, I think that's a fantastic way you do it. Hydration is important, grounding, which has studies, again, we're not just new agers here. And then also exercise, as you said, is great. But resetting your circadian rhythm is still important. Your body is very sensitive, as you said, with even 1 hour time change for daylight savings. There is an increased risk of heart attacks, accidents, and all this other crazy, like a week, until that evens itself out every time we have a time zone. So it's a big deal. This is why every year we have the same conversation. Do we go back to daylight savings time or do we not? Every year it's the same conversation. If you live in Arizona, there's no time change there. And in most countries, actually, that they don't have this either, which is a huge pain. You have teams on other countries, but that's a side note. But anyway, so the way you really want to do it is that this is a great way to use a little bit of melatonin, actually, is to help reset circadian rhythms. And so some people are really sensitive to it. I know you are, I know I am. But this is where I will use a little bit of it as I'm transitioning to different time zones. But usually it's not just melatonin. I'm usually using a combination of things. We have something at something called Trozy at our company that has 8 different ingredients. I'm working on the GABA system, the serotonin modulation, melatonin as well, the endocannabinoid system. So that's our internal cannabis system that modulates both what's called the endocannabinoid system, which is kind of a balancing system for our whole body, along with working on the GABAergic neurotransmitter system as well. Those cannabinoids, CBN, CBD. So I'm a big fan of resetting circadian rhythm with something that's going to help you sleep, with a little bit of melatonin, a little bit of 5-HTP, a little bit of cannabinoids, and something that's working on the GABA system. It also has something called cordycepin in it from the cordyceps mushroom, which works like adenosine. And adenosine has a lot of different roles, but in our brain, it increases sleep pressure. So it's going to help you fall asleep faster and get you better deep sleep too.
Yeah, the Trozy is definitely, I'm not a huge melatonin person, but I will take the Trozy, especially when I travel. And I've gotten to a point where I take Trozy now just comfortably, not every night, but just when I need it. I'm not afraid of the small amount of melatonin in it. That's what I like about it. It's a really small amount. But especially when I'm traveling, then I'll take a half troke or whatever, and it's just knocks me out and resets really quick. I'll link out to that down below too. It's some really good stuff. You guys have awesome products.
Yeah, cordycepin is a fantastic compound, and we use it as a higher strength. It's something called Tromune for immune system activation. And so I use it all the time when I travel. It's called Tromune, and we use that. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's an antimicrobial. It helps increase your deep sleep. That's why it's in Trozy. And so you can use it prophylactically when you're on an airplane, when you're getting to a new destination, when you're resetting your circadian rhythm, everything else like that. It's just another way to support your immune system. And we need neuroprotection. We need brain protection all the time, but we need it more when we travel. And it's a great way to kind of help support our inflammatory cascade so they don't get crazy, and support energy production, deep sleep. So, I mean, there's so many other things that we, typically I would think about with travel, but these are kind of the main ones. I think the other ones is, realize that traveling is very safe on an airplane. So there was this, I know there are a couple of airplanes had accidents recently, and there's a lot of visibility for people like talking about, even my wife is like, you're getting on a plane again. I'm like, yeah, this is what
Oh, dude, I just came back from Hawaii and the plane was 15% full.
Really?
It's just crazy.
That's
just
crazy.
And it's just, anyway.
Air travel is very safe. It's the safest way to travel. It's safer than cars and trains and buses and everything else.
Walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that I definitely do is whenever possible, especially when I'm traveling by myself, it's a little harder when I got the family, but when I'm by myself, it is always a habit to, when I get to the location, if I have a bathtub, I take a hot bath to emulate the sauna. So I make it hot. And I talk about this in
And you're also grounded also in the bath too.
Yes, exactly. So it's like when, and I talk about this all the time because saunas are expensive. Not everyone has access to a sauna. Not everyone's staying at a 5-star resort that has a sauna. All you need is a hot bath. Hot water immersion up to your neck is actually even more effective than a sauna in many ways as far as heat transfer. May not get you the intracranial pressure that you need from a real sauna, but there is that glymphatic effect where you're helping the glymphatic system, which helps you sleep. So,
and it also decreases your body temperature when you come out of the hot bath, so that when your body temperature is lower, you're going to be able to sleep easier as well. I question for what's your favorite seat on an airplane?
I'm always aisle, so I do have to pee. I don't have to bother someone. So I feel, but and I don't sleep on planes. It doesn't work.
Zero.
So I have no risk if I'm in an aisle of, that's the main concern. If if I'm going to sleep and the person on the inside is going to have to get out, that doesn't really bother me. As a matter of fact, it's an excuse to get up and move my legs a little bit. Another thing that I travel with is I got these, Normatec makes the high tech, but you can go on Amazon and you can get for $100 calf.
Oh yeah, okay.
Compressions.
Calf compression.
And they will you just press a button on them. And so
you wear them on the plane?
Yeah. So you just,
nice.
Once you're sitting, once you're comfortable, you just pop them on. They're battery powered and you pop them on. And you look a little weird, but who cares?
I didn't know about those. That's cool.
And so then it's pneumatic and it's just pulsing.
Yeah, that's great.
And that made a big difference just in terms of just that stiffness you have the next day.
So you feel better, just you feel like you're just not as stiff the next day?
The next one is one that I'm not particularly, I could catch some serious crap for. But with my disc issues, I've got 6 blown discs in my back. I take all kinds of measures from an anti-inflammatory perspective. I don't take meloxicam often, but that is when I do have a prescription for meloxicam. It helps me very much so the next day feel like I can get moving. Because my back will stiffen up a lot being on a plane. And I think that's something where, realism alert. That's just
totally.
I'm not opposed to having
drugs are good when they're used appropriately. And that's the thing about anything. It's the dose is the poison and then and the indication, right? Yeah. So it's totally okay. I use anti-inflammatories. I use prescriptions in patients all the time. Myself, if I need them. A great jet lag hack that's prescription, this is Dr. Ted, who I work with, his favorite, is hydrocortisone. Hydrocortisone is the natural steroid that our body makes to make cortisol. But if you want to shift your circadian rhythm, the fastest way to do it is to give yourself hydrocortisone, to give it to you and in a way that would be physiologic for you. So for example, if you're 12 hours apart at your destination, so you're waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning, but it really be 8 p.m., your cortisol is going to be low, right? So what can you do is you can artificially increase your cortisol level in the morning. And then you can do this with exercise, is what you've been doing, right?
Yes, exactly.
But you can do it with exercise, but you can artificially increase your cortisol in the morning. And then you can go on a tapering schedule for about 3 to 5 days to taper yourself to your location. So that's a fancy one to do, but hydrocortisone does work too.
No,
and I sometimes will use that, especially if I don't have the capacity to exercise where I'm going to go. And it works very well. It works, especially if you're going to be under stress, under new locations. If you're in a place you don't want to be, like Vegas or something like that, it's good to have, or you're not going to be sleeping very well because of whatever, hydrocortisone is great. But do I recommend that to everybody? No, but it's a prescription that does work if you need it. Now, would it be better to use, I use a combination of Methylene Blue, nicotine, caffeine, and CBD. It's our blue cannatine in the mornings when you get to your location, because that's going to get you up. It's going to get yourself, you're going to feel stimulated. You're going to get that cortisol rise. It's going to be good, right? Yeah. But I like that you said it, and I think it's important that we say that drugs can be helpful under certain circumstances with medical professional supervision. So.
Yeah, it seems like we have in our society today either
all or none.
Yeah, and there's this that it's not okay to have a crutch now and then. I think that sometimes a crutch is what gets you moving, and there's a really important lesson there that
Yeah.
like if you avoid a crutch because you're afraid of the crutch, then you really need to look inward of like, what are you afraid of? Or are you not confident enough that you can't do it without the crutch ever again? And I think so it comes with some responsibility to know
For sure.
like,
Yeah.
okay, if I take a prescribed by my physician meloxicam, which is just essentially about a 16-hour anti-inflammatory,
Right.
and my spine feels better, and that allows me to get up in the morning and push it hard and not, not push it hard, but push it in a way where I don't feel miserable. I take it for one day, I'm perfectly fine. Another one that I tried that didn't really click with me is, and this may sound like first world kind of things, but concierge medicine is a real thing now.
Totally,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like very much
That's how I work with a lot of patients.
A lot of regular people do it because it's become much more affordable now, just to be like, you know what, I don't want to navigate the system in this complicated reimbursement model that's just complicated and frustrating. So I do ping my doctor. I'd be like, hey, I'm traveling. And he wrote me a prescription for modafinil. And he's like, this is really good for jet lag. I took it and I feel awful. And I know that Asprey's a big fan of it and he takes it every day. But
I have a lot of friends and
I do not
love
like
it.
this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. It's a very high dopaminergic. And so it can increase blood pressure more than most kind of things. And so if you already have low blood pressure, which I think you do and I do as well, if you have a small rise in it, it can make you feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I just did not like. And people are like, oh, I feel my brain feels on. My brain feels off. I don't think so. Anyway.
Yeah, I have other molecules that I play around with, but in general, modafinil is not one of them. I think the main one I use when I travel that's a prescription would be hydrocortisone, which I use. But other than that, I think it's totally fine to use NSAIDs like meloxicam when you need them. As long as I think the main thing for you is that you know what your limitations are as far as the main issue you have when you're taking things that sort of mask the pain, right? Is that you're moving through and doing things that you shouldn't be doing because you don't have pain, although you're still causing trouble, right? So that's the main thing that people have to worry about.
There's also one that's this is almost a whole separate video, but like pentosan sulfate. Like
people,
that's probably a safer way than using meloxicam. But anyway, off of that, one last thing I do want to talk on is caffeine.
Okay,
that's the big thing, especially when you're traveling internationally. It's like the first thing if you're landing at 12 p.m. The first thing you're going to want to do is first off, yes, you should try to stay up and just get on schedule as much as you can, but don't use caffeine to get yourself there. Just get through it, right? Like I always just gut it. So if I land at 12 p.m. after an 11-hour flight, I'm going to do everything I can to just stay up until 8 p.m. or 9 p.m.
You would have been a good doctor in the hospital doing rounds, man. When I had to do 30-hour shifts when I was in medical school, it's not easy to do. It's not easy. Yeah. No. But you're saying no caffeine if you can at all.
Yeah. And then I have no problem hitting caffeine right at the time that I'm getting up in the next morning. Sure. I don't mind artificially spiking cortisol to get myself.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a big one. And caffeine also is a diuretic, right? It's not a profound diuretic, but it does dehydrate you as well. So it's not something that I like people to do on airplanes for the most part either. Obviously, alcohol is a terrible thing to do on planes for a lot of different reasons, but alcohol is going to dehydrate you. It's also, it's not going to help you sleep. It works on the GABA system, but it's going to bind very tightly to the GABA system very quickly and then unbind very quickly for most people. Yeah. And then you're going to get, you'll get side effects of that. You won't get good sleep. It's people put themselves to bed on airplanes like that with alcohol, but alcohol is it ruins your circadian rhythms and your immune system and gives you a high risk of getting sick when you get to your location. There's lots of things
it's amazing how many people drink on planes just to sedate themselves.
Yeah, I know, exactly. The lady next to me on the plane here was drinking alcohol so that she just would calm down. I'm like, I have better things for you. This is not the way you want to do this.
No, that's where the Trocalm that you guys have. Honestly, quite frankly, and it wasn't intending on this to be like a big plug, but pretty much like every single one of the Troscription's products has an application for travel. And I think that not that this is to deter all people, but it's like, I know that Troscriptions was kind of created a little bit more for the almost busy executive or busy, person that these are high-end products. Like they're and they're designed as such.
They're designed to be.
When you think about jet lag, it's like these are the people that would use it. Yeah. So they may not be for everybody, but for people like me that are running a business and I'm traveling and I'm doing these things, like these are the sort of boutique kind of good, high quality products that I would use. And it makes sense with it's almost like everything was designed with jet lag in mind.
Right. I think there's lots of natural alternatives for things that are much lower cost overall, especially behavior, lifestyle, things you can do with food and exercise that we just talked about. These are they're very affordable. Taking supplements is a next level to work on your jet lag and work on your performance and work on your health optimization and things like that. But I think we try to do is have a gamut of things that are available. But certainly as we've developed everything, all of them have an application just about when you're traveling.
Yep.
And so that's when I'm super stacking multiple of our products together. Where I take our Methylene Blue regularly, I take our Cordyceps regularly, but I don't take all the other ones regularly.
Yeah.
But then I'll take the Z, I'll take the Calm, I'll take but I'm also like, what's your hydration? What's your food status going to be? Where are you going? And et cetera, et cetera. Like my seat is the aisle as well, by the way. Like I like to sit in the aisle so I can get up and move without anybody having to move for me. So, so anyway, there's so many things we can do to make travel easier. It's a very safe placed way to travel, especially airplane travel. It doesn't have to be stressful. We can find ways to make it more relaxing. So. Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, where can everyone find you, Scott?
Yeah, so if you're interested in my work, at Dr. Scott Sherr, DrScottSherr. I have a clinical practice where I work with people in a kind of a concierge way, actually, and it's called Health Optimization Medicine. It's basically a telemedicine concierge that I do from Colorado. So I work with patients trying to optimize their health over long periods of time, and I work with people not as their primary care doctor, but more of like a primary consultant on their health, not on their diseases. And this is based on a nonprofit that we help run called Health Optimization Medicine and Practice, or Home Hope for short. If anybody's interested in the nonprofit, they can go to homehope.org. If they're interested in working with me, it's home-sf.co.
Right on, man.
Good to see you.